was Gavaskar, the real master. Just like a wall, we couldn't know Gavaskar at all. Not at all. You know the West Indies couldn't know Gavaskar at all.
Hello and welcome to a special episode. We're not really giving it a number this time around, but a special episode of the No Balls Cricket Podcast. We are doing a women's cricket roundup plus a preview of the World Cup, which starts in 2 days. We, as usual, we are cutting things fine in terms of getting content out in terms of ahead of a series or tournament, because that's what we do. That is Siddhant Pradhan, our club cricketer, who I believe has a cricket match coming up soon. That
Cricket
he's
week,
traveling
not
for.
cricket match. No, I'm not traveling for cricket tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's a different game.
Oh, okay. You're traveling for squash.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So, what
Right.
you want to call me a squash player extraordinaire all of a sudden? No.
I'll figure that out. But I don't know. I don't think I need to be as complimentary as that.
This is our Women's World Cup preview, and it is sponsored by Jimmy's Iced Coffee. I don't know. It's just what I'm drinking right now. Jimmy's Iced Coffee. If you want to sponsor us, please go ahead.
Yeah, we should be clear that these aren't actual real sponsors.
No, of course not.
The only real sponsor we have is Anchor. But yes, if anyone.
No, and also PDC. That's an actual real sponsor.
Oh yes, of course, yes, of course.
Also, very good coffee. This.
Yes. We're giving them free advertising. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Anyway, right, Mr. Respected Journalist.
Yes.
Who is going to beat Australia
in the World Cup? It's hard to see, but New Zealand just beat them in a warm up and fairly comprehensively. Actually, that was a.
Well, it also took an epic from Sophie Devine.
It did. That you're right, but also that they finished that chase a lot quicker than anyone would expect. Right? It was. I think they were chasing down 321 was the target, and they finished that in like some 43 overs.
Okay, background to all of this before we go on to the warm-up games. The Women's World Cup is being finally going to begin. It's been delayed by a year because of the pandemic. It's due to take place in New Zealand, which for the last 2 or 3 years, since the 2017 World Cup rather, so the last 5 years basically, has been the highest scoring cricketing venue in women's cricket. That is A. B, it is the first Women's World Cup that includes Bangladesh, special for them. It's also the first Women's World Cup to not have a qualifier. Normally, the top 5 teams qualify based on rankings, and the rest then fight for 3 spots to get into the tournament via a qualifier. This time, however, because of COVID, no qualifier. So Sri Lanka are the full member that's missed out, along with Ireland, Zimbabwe as well. The last time we had a Cricket World Cup, Thailand were involved. They aren't this time, unfortunately.
Yes, I remember that.
And Bangladesh make their first appearance because they're high up on the rankings. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. We're basically going to speak mostly about the Indian team because that's what we know about, and that's what we're basically Indians, so that's what we don't live there anymore. But that's a different story.
And we have to give some background about what's been happening in women's cricket in India over the last few months. We can't remember how long it's been since we did our last episode on women's cricket. It was maybe 4 or 5 months ago, sometime late last year.
Mm-hmm. It's been 4 or 5 months, and a lot's been going on in women's cricket, and we will come to the controversial selections as well.
Yeah.
The basic thing that we want to get out the way, though, is that of the 8 teams, and this is again a Women's World Cup that's going to be played in the same format as the 2019 Men's World Cup. Also, everyone plays everyone. There's only 8 teams, however. Everyone plays everyone, then 2 semifinals and a final. And the games to look out for if you're an Indian fan: India play Pakistan. That's a big game, and of course
this Sunday,
which is a Sunday. As always, that's a day-nighter as well, so people in India can catch it. It's rather difficult for someone living in England, however, and I don't know what it's like for anyone living in the US. Um,
It starts really late at night for me, and then will continue on through the night. So I don't know how much I'll catch.
so it starts early in the night for me and then carries on through. So I'm probably not going to end up watching it. Not because I don't want to, just because
it's just the time. It's just the time.
Yes, it's time.
This happened the last T20, not the last, or maybe the previous T20 World Cup that was in Australia and we were in India. It was the games would happen very early in the morning, so it was hard to. Though I did wake up for the final. But anyway,
if you say so. Anyway, moving on. Here's a list of teams that is not going to win this World Cup: Bangladesh, Pakistan. That's it, pretty much. Everyone else has a chance.
I don't. Anyway, I don't want to be as dismissive of Bangladesh and Pakistan in women's cricket as I am in men's cricket. I mean, Pakistan I'm only dismissive of in men's cricket because of the rivalry. They're actually usually a fairly good team.
Oh no, I'm just writing them off because I don't think they're good enough. Has nothing to do with the rivalry. I don't think either of those two teams are good enough to win the World Cup. The other six, however, very likely. I mean,
very likely, but there are a few clear favorites there.
There are a few clear favorites. There's one clear favorite. It's like
Australia's the
everyone is here and Australia is like up there. The Australians power packed. I mean, what a squad. Meg Lanning. Look at the names on this list. There are already previous World Cup winners in there as well. Of course, they haven't won a World Cup since 2013 because Harmanpreet Kaur knocked them out of the last one. And the last time they won, I believe it was Lisa Stalekar who was still playing. She was captain as well. But look at the names on this list.
Quite possible if it was 9 years ago.
It was 9 years ago. Meg Lanning, the ones to watch out for: Meg Lanning, Ashley Gardner, who's one of the first Aboriginals to play Test cricket for one of 3 Aboriginal cricketers to play Test cricket for Australia. Quick quiz is who are the other 2? They're both men. One played recently in the Ashes. One was the only night watchman to ever make a double 100 in Test cricket. If you don't get those 2, then unfortunately, you guys are useless. But look at the rest of the names on this list. The big ones: Meg Lanning, Ashley Gardner, Rachel Haynes, Alyssa Healy, Jess Jonathan, left-arm spinner, Alana King, who's made a absolutely brilliant start to her Test career, the leg spinner for Australia. Talia McGrath, the all-rounder, Beth Mooney as well, and of course everyone's favorite Elise Perry, Megan Schutt, Annabelle Sutherland, the quick, and Amanda Jade. Well, so those are the big names: Amanda Jade Wellington, Grace Harris, and Nicola Carey and Darcy Brown make up the rest of the squad, but that is power packed. I mean, you look at those names and you're just thinking, there are 5 people that can beat you on one day. There are 3 people that can beat you on their own on any other day.
There's a reason they're clear favorites, even despite the warm-up loss to New Zealand. I mean, it's pretty clear that just the level of talent throughout the squad sets them apart.
I mean, what they did to England in the Ashes also, I mean, they just basically annihilated them. It was during the limited over was like, no. Yeah. During the limited over was like absolutely annihilated England. Came close to the Test match, but of course this is one-day cricket, so it doesn't really matter. The format changes.
Yeah.
Going through the rest of the teams, you'd look at South Africa and the West Indies as dark horses. South Africa, without one very important name, their captain, Tane van Niekerk, is not in the squad. She's out with an injury. Players to look out for them: Shabnam Ismail and Marzan Cap, the 2 quicks. And then with the back, you have to look at Lizelle Lee and Laura Fulfart. And yeah, those are the 2 main ones that you're looking out for, as well as Mignon du Preez.
Shabnam Ismail has been getting a little bit of notoriety recently because she has a great bouncer. One which recently knocked Smriti Mandhana out of a game for a couple of days, and it's just in general one of the best exponents of the bouncer in women's cricket.
No, definitely. I mean, one of the quickest bowlers in women's cricket as well. So she, gives a real sort of fight for everybody there. Will they win the World Cup? Probably not. They're in good form though. They've beaten the West Indies and they beat India the last time they traveled to India as well. Bear in mind we will get to India in a minute, but that was the first series that India played post-pandemic they hadn't played in a year.
Yeah, it was a pretty undercooked India side.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they did win 4-1 and they won pretty convincingly at that. So dark horses for them to watch out for. And the other dark horse team that I want to get into, and this is a real dark horse team, is the West Indies. And they have some serious power in this team. Deandra Doughton made 160 in the recently concluded ODI series against South Africa. She's the one of the bigger ones to watch out for. But the other big names that they have, Hayley Matthews, Stefani Taylor, and Shakira Salman as well, and Anisa Mohammed, the left-arm spinner.
Yeah, and we know this West Indies team, they've kind of followed the tradition, the now conventional West Indies format of just a lot of flair and a lot of power hitters and just like really exciting cricket to watch, and that automatically puts them in the dark horses category.
And I mean, they go by what a traditional sort of West Indian team is supposed to be is because of the variable conditions between the West Indian venues. Remember, places like Trinidad and Guyana spin, Barbados is really quick, Jamaica gives you a best of both worlds. You get a well-rounded team as well. We know the West Indies men's side hasn't been the best for a long, long time, but the women can create an upset. Remember the last time the Women's T20 World Cup was held alongside the men, they did win it. That was in 2016.
That was in 2016.
So they are a pretty dangerous team. So, honestly, underestimate them at your own peril.
Yeah, for sure. Definite dark horses.
Definite. So those are the two dark horses. If I was to pick 4 teams to qualify for the semifinals, these are my 4 though. So we've already spoken about Australia. The other 3, I would say India, New Zealand, and probably South Africa.
Not England?
Oh, sorry. India, England, and then probably South Africa. Not New Zealand. Beg your pardon.
Not New Zealand? Okay. Anyway.
A bit of a bias.
We will get into it.
We will get into that. A bit of a bias on that, actually. Sorry. But probably, so I think 3 spots I'm more or less, you're right, actually. I don't know why. That was a bit of a biased opinion. But the 3 or 4 teams that I'm looking at, Australia, New Zealand, England, obviously the 3 strongest. We will get to New Zealand, England in a second, and then of course we'll come to India. But you're looking at New Zealand recently concluded ODI series against India where they won. Very high scoring series that for a women's series, honestly.
Yeah.
And players to look out for from New Zealand. They're the hosts as well, don't forget. Sophie Devine, who's the captain, Susie Bates, absolutely class batsman. The Kerr sisters, Amelia Kerr's been in fantastic form. She's been moved up to number 3 and created a storm. Amy Satterthwaite, I can't pronounce that properly, and Leah Tahu, the quick.
Yeah, I mean, and Amelia Kerr has, I think, just become one of the big stars of women's cricket. Just produced another. Was it her innings that I was talking about in the no? Well, it was her and Sophie Devine together in that warm up game against Australia. So Devine had that hit 161 of 117. To help that chase. Amelia Kerr has just generally been one of the stars. Her innings in that game was 92 of 75. So clearly these are people in form, and India kind of had them be in form in the recent series, and with the home advantage as well. And again, talented side all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And home conditions, how much of a factor can that play? However, there have been very good pitches at a lot of these venues that they've played at. And that has really, really helped the New Zealand side. I think they've been fabulous because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
And if we're going to get more of the same, we're going to get a very exciting World Cup, I must say.
I agree. And this is also why I'm surprised that you're saying that you're not saying New Zealand as a semi-finals contender.
We'll revisit that. I forgot about England. That's the main reason. England probably second favorites in the tournament, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, defending champions, I don't know. I mean, the Ashes series show that there's a gap between them and Australia, but then there's probably a gap between everyone in Australia, as you've been saying. Where England rank against the likes of India, New Zealand, South Africa, that's probably the more pertinent question. I think second likeliest or second favorites are probably the right place to put them.
Yeah, I think second would be the right place to put them. I think them and New Zealand are probably fighting for that second slot, unless Harmanpreet Kaur decides to, rain on everybody's parade like she did last time. So England players to look at: Heather Knight and Nat Siver, the captain and vice captain. Those are two great players to have. Then you have Tammy Beaumont, Catherine Brunt, Kate Cross as well, Sophie Eccleston, the left arm spinner. Anya Shrubsole, every Indian does not want to remember her. And
I was just about to say.
And then you look at maybe Danny Wyatt as well. But it's a power pack squad. It's got pretty much everything. It's got all the bases covered. They've got a good fast bowling lineup. You look at people like Brunt. Well. Yeah, Brunt, Anya Shrubsole, Nat Siver, Kate Cross as well. So those are your quicks.
If any of the conditions end up being traditional New Zealand conditions which aid swing, that's going to be a dangerous bowling lineup to face.
Yeah. I would say it would be a surprise if England don't make the final, but the real question for England is, can they beat Australia? And that is,
Yeah. But we're saying this for we've said that England, New Zealand are power pack squads. We know that there's talent all across the board, but there is a clear gap at the moment.
No, there's a very clear gap. We're not going to go into Bangladesh and Pakistan because we don't really know too much about them.
Because you've already dismissed them at the start.
No, so. Honestly, for the fact that you really don't watch much women's cricket with them in it, not because of anything else, but just because it isn't broadcast.
No, that's true.
I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, it will. Seeing the India-Pakistan game will be interesting. It's always obviously a huge draw at any ICC tournament. Will be again this weekend. It'll probably be for us a good first look at this iteration of the Pakistan side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be a really it'll be an interesting one to just see. The Bangladesh team has some brilliant names as well that I really want to mention here. Just for how brilliant this name is. Her name is Fargana Hawk Pinky.
That is quite an interesting name.
And for Pakistan, Bisma Maroof, obviously the captain, is the one that everyone needs to watch out for. And as well, actually, as Diana Baig. So those are the two names that you sort of know. Nida Dar as well.
Yeah.
Not really much known about the rest of the team, at least that we haven't seen, basically.
Yeah, at least from our perspective. I'm sure we should say that there are probably more avid watchers of women's cricket who know these players a lot better than we do. But I think from a Pakistan perspective, our knowledge, and Bangladesh perspective, really, our knowledge is a little limited.
Right, coming to the Indian side, and I have a feeling India are going to really struggle in this tournament. I'm looking at that squad and I'm thinking, where's the fast bowling?
We said this, the last time we were talking about India as well. I think when we were doing a little bit of a roundup of the series versus New Zealand, and it's literally their fast bowling has ended up being Jhulan Goswami and like almost no one else, and that's a problem. Jhulan Goswami's been playing for like donkey's years now. The fact that we don't have any fast bowler that can sort of back her up and be a good partner is a huge weakness.
The batting looks okay. Weirdly looks okay without Jemima Rodriguez.
I'm surprised, and I don't know how much will go into that selection decision, but I am surprised that Jemima Rodriguez is not in the squad. But yes, you're right. The Smriti Mandhana's found some form. Harmanpreet Kaur found some form in the last ODI versus New Zealand. I do want to say, as controversial as this opinion may be, Mithali Raj is a bit of she's probably still the best batter in the squad. but also her batting style may hold India back quite often. I think the pace she plays at in a limited overs setting, it sometimes it prevents India from scoring bigger totals. But I mean, she probably has her reasons. She wants to anchor the side. She wants to guard against any quick loss of wickets. But at times so that might be an issue.
You look at the rest of the team. I mean, you look at so Julan Goswami and Pooja Vasakar seem to be the only two quicks. That's what's really bothering me, because if there's an injury there, you're finished. Simran Bahadur is the backup quick, but the other two the sub standbys are Ekta Bisht and S Meghna. Now Meghna is basically a batsman. Ekta Bisht is a left-arm spinner.
Yeah, I mean, it just basically just reinforces what you're saying. The quick fast bowling is a bit of not a bit, a huge weakness at the moment.
It's a huge weakness. However, having said that, you look at the spin department and it's pretty well stacked. You look at the batting and the thing that you're missing, really not much. I mean, Mithali Raj, fine, she's the only one that can sort of hang around, but everywhere else you look, there's people that can get on with it. I mean, Yastika Bhatia, and then you go down, you look at Shefali Varma, Harmanpreet Kaur, Smriti Mandana, obviously we've already spoken about. So it does look all right. I think the batting is not the issue. Spinners, you're well stacked as well. You have Poonam Yadav, you have Rajeshwari Gaikwad and Deepti Sharma, and also Seharana. So they're well stacked there. I think that's not going to be a problem. They're going to depend on the spinners, obviously, to pick up their wickets. And I think in the one game in that series where the spinners did do well is when India did best.
Yeah, and I mean, that's been the case, I think, for a while in both bilateral series and the tournaments. Even the last T20 World Cup, I remember, it was largely, we relied a lot on Poonam Yadav and Deepti Sharma, and they both end up being quite tricky bowlers to face for a lot of batters around the world.
The other thing that you have to notice is that Deepti Sharma's sort of standing as a batter seems to have dropped with all these players that have come in that can score faster than him.
Yeah, which I think is a little bit of natural evolution, I guess. Because you've been mentioning how the tournaments or games so far have been high scoring, and the point is, if you need to be high scoring, then you also need to score quickly, and so you value players who can do that a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a squad with a few gaping holes in it, namely the fast bowling.
Yeah.
I mean, you really only have Pooja Vasakar and obviously Julan Goswami, but you're missing somebody. And I mean, it's unbelievable to me that you can leave out someone of the experience of Shikha Pandey.
Yeah, that was the other controversial selection outside of China.
I mean, to be fair,
there's been no real communication as to why that's happened. It's just they've kept it internal, and they've just said, "This is the squad we think is best for the World Cup." But yeah,
to be fair, the worry for me is not so much leaving out Jemima Rodrigues, because the rest of the batting sort of covers up for that.
That is true, and especially when you have when someone like Shefali Varma has come on so well since she's made her debut. You can cover for her. That I agree.
Also, the promise that the two Bhatias, Tanya and Yasika Bhatia, prove sort of show you is that in that as batters they can progressively score, pretty quickly.
Yeah. So they I mean, basically going to your point, because of people like them, there is a batting depth that makes you feel a little more comfortable in leaving Jemima out.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, interesting to see that. I mean, Shikha Pandey being left out is just a really, really odd one. And
can't understand it.
I mean, even if you had a fast bowler of the backup quality that someone like, say, Arundhati Reddy would have provided, that would have been fine. But just going in with two, and Pooja Vasakar is known to be a bit profligate. She can go for runs at times.
Yeah. One
So-
interesting thing about Jhulan Goswami is she's become a really good lower order hitter in recent years.
Yeah, so I mean, interesting to see that. But where do we really rate them? If they make the semi-finals, it'll be a bit of an achievement for me.
Yeah, it does seem like I don't know if it's regression from them. Obviously, we're going to go into this a little bit in terms of what's happened with Indian women's cricket, but compared to the side, or just not compared to the side, but in terms of matching this against the 2017 tournament run, it feels like a lot of teams have just sort of overtaken them in the standing, and part of it is just because India play a lot less cricket on the women's side, but also I think the talent that has come up in other places, it's just come up a lot more compared to the way it has in India.
We've been through this with Indian cricket. You know it's going to be the case, but the BCCI just has not been paying any attention to it.
Yeah, and that's hampering this team's chances in this particular tournament as well. I do think you mentioned dark horse contenders. I think they're amongst that, and they can. I would not be surprised to see them in the semis, but yeah, you see sides like England, New Zealand, Australia. Clearly, especially we've played New Zealand and Australia recently and lost those series fairly comprehensively. Same with South Africa the last when we came back after the pandemic. So we know that that gap has been there. It's the replicating that sort of run from 2017 is going to be a challenge.
I think you have to also realize, I think that run was a bit of a fairy tale.
It was. Also, and speaking of that run, by the way, there's a lot of pressure on Harmanpreet Kaur at the moment because there's just been a lot of talk that since that tournament, she's not been great in India colors. She's been a really good batter when, in fact, not just batter, she's effectively just become a really good all-rounder when it's come up in when she's played in franchise cricket, both in England and Australia. But her performances for India haven't been great. She did just score a 50 in the last innings out against New Zealand, but up until then, someone like Diana Elgi, for example, was saying that it maybe she doesn't even deserve a place in the side at the moment.
I mean, it's hard to drop Harmanpreet Kaur. I mean, she is one of your best batsmen. I think the thing that they need to do though is I think Harmanpreet Kaur is one of those players that does better as she's moved higher up the order. And batting at 5 or 6, I think she goes into a sort of mindset where it's kind of a bit of like sort of bash or block. And I think some of those people, I feel as a batter that she could just, if she goes out there with a completely clear head, she'll be fine. But if she's sort of in between, it's a bit like Yuvraj Singh, honestly. You sometimes used to watch Yuvraj Singh in situations where he's not sure of what he has to do. Either, play a sort of calm inning and bat time or just go for it. Invariably, in the situations where he goes in with a clear head and an idea of what to do, he does much better.
Which I guess is probably true of
I think
batters,
it's the same for
across formats and for everyone, right? Like you need the clarity of what you're trying to do, whether it's role, whether it's context of the situation. Like that just helps for any batter, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but as I say, I just think she should bat a little bit higher up the order, and that'll probably be better off. But the whole team will probably be better off for.
But who would you move down is the question then.
Well, I mean, you have to have Mithali Raj batting at 3, so the rest of the order can move down a bit.
Dare I suggest have Harmanpreet at 3?
I mean, it's not a bad suggestion, but then you run into the obvious problem of having Mithali Raj, who's not the quickest, let me remind you, batting at 4, and that could hamper an inning. Now, Raj with time is a different ball game. Harmanpreet Kaur at 4, I think, would be a perfect fit.
Well, I mean, we're talking about clarity in terms of, knowing exactly what you have to do. I think if Mithali Raj comes in towards the end of an innings, which she may have to do, which she would hopefully if, the more often she bats 4 or maybe even 5, I don't know, 4, well, let's keep it at 4. That means she knows that she has to score quicker and therefore she may just not take as much time to get herself in.
It could do, but the other problem is, do you really feel, and I'm not taking away from anything Mithali Raj has done over how many ever years in women's cricket. Do you really think she has the game to come in and be a lower order basher.
Well, I mean, also we're talking about number 4, so that's not really like it's not a low order basher. We're saying 4. I mean, I mentioned 5 briefly, but 4, 5 is not. It's like you're still a frontline batter there. It's just your role changes slightly. Whether she has the game to score, I mean, look, she's had a decent level of success in T20 cricket as well. So it's not. Yes, she probably can't, not probably. She definitely isn't as explosive as someone like a Smriti Mandana or Harmanpreet Kaur, but she has the shots, and if you give her that role, she can maybe grow into it.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase. Semi-finalists. Who are you backing?
I'm saying Australia, England, New Zealand, India.
Interesting. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say India aren't making it. I'm going to go with South Africa as the 4th one.
Yeah. Well, look, so at least you finally corrected yourself after I said
corrected,
why New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, I did forget about England. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, good job. You forgot about the defending World Cup champions.
Yeah, this is how much I don't want to remember Anya Shrubsole.
Fair enough. That was a heartbreaking moment for us.
That was a horrible day to watch cricket for an Indian fan. Anyway, Indian women's cricket has been launched into the stratosphere, and the BCCI is doing absolutely bugger all about it.
Yes. Speaking of horrible things that have been happening in Indian women's cricket, it's just been the last 2 years, especially the once the pandemic hit, and then the cricket reaction to the pandemic. Women's cricket has just been shafted like completely.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole point over the last week was if you look through the BCCI's women's cricket Twitter handle, there are more posts from the fake BCCI women's handle than the real one.
They're doing absolutely nothing to promote this squad. I think today was finally the first time, Star Sports did a promo, and that's not even, it's not like they did a promo for the World Cup. They just did a promo for the India-Pakistan match. The sort of hype video that you'd get with the men's team before any tournament. Honestly, forget before any tournament. They'll do hype videos before any random series. That's just, that level of promotion, it's just nowhere close to that.
Do you want to, the question now really is, before we end this episode, we have 2 questions to ask. Only 2. One that's rhetorical and one that I want an answer for. Does the BCCI really care about women's cricket?
This is a rhetorical one. I can answer it for you, but
we can all answer it. Yeah. The second question that I want to end on before we conclude this Women's World Cup preview. Who can beat Australia? Anyone?
Wait, no, I need to bash the BCCI more. Hang on. Your rhetorical is too rhetorical. No, look, when it comes to women's cricket, I mentioned the whole post-pandemic thing. Also, just the way the sort of disdainful way they've spoken about the possibilities of a women's IPL coming up, which is something that we've been crying out for years now. And instead, all we've gotten is that 4-team T20 challenge that's happened.
Which is honestly a bit crap, huh?
Yeah. And so the latest thing from the BCCI was, we don't have enough depth and talent to have a full IPL. How are you going to find the depth and talent if you don't organize these tournaments and organize these events? Also, how do you not have a depth and talent for a full nationwide tournament when West Bengal, which is the association from which the current BCCI president comes from, is able to organize a big tournament full of, I think it was like an 8-team tournament. If they can organize that, if there's enough talent just in West Bengal to have that big a tournament, how is there not enough talent in all of India to organize that? It's ridiculous.
Wow, it is. Again, BCCI, do you really care about women's cricket? Do you?
Oh,
is it just us?
We can also,
do you?
We can also do a follow-up from last week's episode because we bashed Boria Majumdar a lot. Boria Majumdar's PhD in cricket needs to be revoked because he clearly has completely outdated and arrogant views when it comes to women's cricket. Everyone talks about the whole revenue issue and how are we going to do more matches when they don't make enough money. Again, promote it, grow the game. It will end up starting to make money.
So is he the Indian cricketing version of Mullah Omar? That is the way to end a No Balls Cricket episode. Thank you all very much for watching. This has been our women's cricket preview. Do tune into the Women's World Cup, however odd the time zones are. It is in New Zealand. There are a lot of day-night games. It should be really fun. It's a good tournament. There will be some very good cricket on. Enjoy.
Yes, it should be a good, fun tournament to watch, however much we can watch.
If you guys are watching on YouTube, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon to remain notified of all our videos. And if you're listening to us on audio, we're available on all these platforms, and they include Pocket Casts, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podcast Addict as well.